All right. Yes. All right, just turn the volume down. Mute needs down, with the volume needs to go down.
There we go.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Test.
As long as volume is off, it's fine.
Yeah, just turn volume off. I would
fine.
say more
Yeah.
that it's recording to the people at home so that they can hear us.
As long as mic is still, yeah, you can see the audio going up and down.
Okay,
Yep,
good.
okay, yep. Looks like we're good to go. Thank you for the technical support there. All right, folks, welcome to the January 8th, 2025 Bar Large meeting in the public meeting room at 2 George Street. My name is Trey Watkins, and I'll be serving as the chairman this afternoon. The other board members present this afternoon are Seton Brown, James Metters, Steve Ramos, and Joel Trantham. City staff present are BD Wortham Galvin, who's our city architect, Lawrence Courtney, our staff architect, and Brad Thomas, the staff architectural planner. The applicants have been required to submit any documents in advance of the meeting. Staff will control the slide presentation that includes everything submitted by the applicant by the deadline in accordance with the submittal requirements. The applicants simply need to ask staff to advance to the next slide during the presentation, or you all can try your best to use the clicker yourselves. The applicant, staff, and the board members are required to give their name when speaking. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed to the City of Charleston public meeting channel on YouTube. Your appearance here is your consent to be recorded. The order of the meeting will be as follows. First, we'll have an introduction and overview of the project by city staff to the board and for the public. Next will be the applicant presentation. This is a 10-minute time limit, or as is determined by the chair, with any questions of the applicant by the board or staff. Any and all presenters should clearly state their name for the record. Persons affiliated with the project, be it owners, developers, designers, consultants, etc., should speak during this portion rather than during the public comment. Next is public comment. All applications are part of a public meeting. Written public comments were due by noon the day prior to the meeting, and any received comments have been transmitted to and considered by the board members. Written comments will not be read aloud during the meeting unless requested by a member of the board and with permission by the chair. Any member of the public who wishes to be heard in person on an agenda item at this time is requested to state their name and address for the record. And to be reminded, there's a 2-minute time limit for those remarks unless extended by the chair. The applicant does not respond to comments made during the public comment portion. Next, we'll have our city staff comments and recommendation, followed by the applicant response or clarification to the public comments and the city staff comments and recommendation. Note, this response has a 5-minute time limit, and the applicant does not have to use the applicant response period if they do not feel it is necessary. We'll then have our board discussion and vote. The applicant presentation at this time is over and public comment is closed. Applicant may clarify inaccurate information when recognized by the chair by raising a hand and waiting to be called upon. Board members will be polled by the chairperson for comments and for their vote on a motion. The chair shall reread a motion verbatim, and the board member making the motion should correct the chair if he has not reread the motion accurately. Once a motion is proper order and seconded, each member when voting should respond yay in favor or nay not in favor. And then the results will be posted on the city website at www.charleston-sc.gov/bar. We have one item that has been withdrawn tonight. It's B1-173 Ashley Avenue, which was withdrawn by staff. We have already received some public comment. One comment was submitted for item B2 at 81 Gadsden Street. As a reminder, please turn off all cell phones and other potentially disruptive devices. Please limit your comments to architecture only. Comments related to zoning, such as parking, traffic, and lot coverage, as well as livability department concerns, are not under the purview of this board and cannot be voiced here. All right, so we'll move then to approval of the minutes. The minutes have been circulated amongst the board members. Thank Thank you. We've got a motion to move to approve by Mr. Metters. There's second. Second. If you would, Mr. Ramos, do you, I'll take votes for approval of the minutes.
Yay in favor?
Mr. Trantham,
Yay in favor.
Mr. Brown,
Yay in favor.
Mr. Metters, and I'm also yay in favor. So the minutes are approved. That will take us to, let's sure I got the right agenda today.
Maybe.
Yeah, 81 Gadsden Street. You want
You want to move forward? 81 Gadsden Street is new construction in High District 5 in the Old City District. They're requesting preliminary approval for a new 5-story special needs housing development for the Ronald McDonald House. Lawrence will forward to the location to remind everyone. And before we ask the applicants to get up, for the board, I know that some board members weren't here the very first time this was heard, but if those who were recall, SCDOT is doing changes to Calhoun and the streetscape. Some of that was TRC engaged with some of that late yesterday with some current concerns about the sizing of sidewalks. The applicants will address it. I just wanted to bring up that if they're addressing it, we're moving forward with the application as presented and making a decision because they are confident that these things can be worked out with SCDOT. But on public record, if it requires a substantial change in the building design, they would have to come back to the board. But we have good faith feelings about SCDOT. I know not a sentence I probably never said before in my previous life. But we have good faith feelings about that it's resolved and would not impact the building design whatsoever.
Substantially that northwest corner.
Well, it's not only the northwest corner, but also Berry and Gadsden Streets themselves,
Okay.
in terms of dimension. But we're confident enough about what's happening to be able to move forward with an approval of this. And if anything changed, they're aware that they would have to come back before the board if SCUT changes things that impacts the building.
Understood. Thank you.
Yeah. And so now ready for applicant presentation.
You, David Bird, LS3P. Charles Hurts addressed that. So we are working closely with HDR and Department of Transportation for the modifications and widening of Calhoun Street corridor for drainage. That's what it's being done for. It's also for safety on that stretch. That's actually our stretch right in front of our property from Gaston to Berry. So there are some adjustments being made and we can make the adjustments with them so that the sidewalks meet the TRC requirements, which is the city's requirements. So there's one little area where we had a concern, but we're going to resolve it with them. So it should not be an issue for this and it wouldn't change the design of the building. The other thing that I wanted to address before Thomas gets up and speaks about, so the commentaries that we had at the last meeting revolved around really 2 items. One was the use of fiber cement siding, and the second was the level of brick detailing. We had kind of scaled back on the brick detailing, probably overly so. There was a comment about it being too much, so then we went back too far, and now we brought it back to the level that we think it needs to be. And then some of the activation on Calhoun Street and Gadsden. So I'll just address the fiber cement. There is a materials board in front of you. We put a sample of fiber cement here. These are the colors that we're using. And then we put some example commercial buildings. I think there was a concern that it's not a material that was scalable to this size of building. So we found examples that I thought showed proof that is scalable. We're also not using the siding in the normal way. It's not lap siding like you'd see in houses. We're using vertical with muttons and recesses. So I think the material itself lends itself to this commercial application. So that's really all I wanted to say about that. And then Thomas is going to talk about the brick detailing.
Thomas Jasper with LS3B, architect on the project. Flip through to our records. So as David mentioned, there were 3 overarching comments I think that we focused on in refining and developing this design. It was the cementitious siding, the brick ornamentation, and then the activation of the main streets, Calhoun, Gaston, Berry. This image I'll use to go through how we further developed and refined the brick ornamentation. This is the corner at Calhoun and Gadsden. You'll see the previous design approved during conceptual to the left and our proposed to the right there. We had cut this detail and brick ornamentation back a lot in ways to focus more on massing architectural direction, but also to kind of lean more towards that postmodern character that is the campus of McDonald site. But we do agree, we agreed, and both the board and staff also gave us the directive that it was a little bit too much. And so in starting to develop and further that design, we first looked at the materials on what kind of brick we were going to use. And so we used two strategies here. One, we looked to a tumbled look brick to relate more back to historic Charleston. And then we took that tumbled brick and applied it to the facade in a simple modular way, and applied a more match color to it to create a very simple mass facade. So it's much more textural. So it's a traditional material, but being used in a more modern way. And so that was kind of our strategy there, relating it back to the overall field brick, relating that back to the site. To further develop the brick, we also reincorporated the Ronald McDonald insignia into the gable ends on both the east and west facades. We did that also just in a textural way. It's using the same field brick with bushes and poles, just to create that kind of monolithic feel. At the parapet level of the brick facades, we incorporated a very traditional but simplistic brick coping. It's a double stepped row lock with a soldier course beneath. And we applied a metal coping for functional reasons to the top of that, but are painting it to match the brick to relate it back to that more traditional brick coping that you would see on a traditional brick gable in Charleston. In further refining facades, we incorporated a brick accent soldier course at each level that aligns with both the window sills, as well as our seaming of the fiber cement siding, just creating that kind of cohesive language between all facade languages. This soldier course is also strategically being used to hide the relieving angles that are required for our brick veneer. There's a larger gap for that border line, and so by providing this soldier course, it kind of hides the fact that we have that line cutting through our monolithic brick facade. In further developing the brick, we also applied a simple step soldier coursing at all of the lower roof coping edges, as well as any of the planter box edges, creating that cohesive language for all the brick. And in sort of some of the lower areas to activate both Gadsden's and that Gadsden Calhoun corner, we incorporated these niched areas in the more simplistic flat brick facades, both along that Gadsden facade as well as at that kind of corner point. And we incorporated that same accent brick there and used it in a soldier course stack bond detail. It's a little bit more of a modern character, but once again, with the tumbled brick, we feel like it kind of relates back to both that postmodern character and traditional character of Charleston. These niches also provide a nice backdrop and accent for the updates and refinements to the landscaping. Circulus landscape design did a good refinement of our landscaping in the conceptual phase. We created a raised planter at the corner there that is a mirror of the courtyard on the west side, and then we've also added that planter along that Gadsden facade with some vines that would grow up that kind of niched element there. This would be the corner. This is showing the south and west facades of our building. The main west facade being the entry there. You'll see that we've deployed the same kind of brick strategies here. You can see the insignia also applied to the west facade, the coping continuing around. all the way, and also those brick bandings occurring at each floor level. You'll also note that because of structural reasons as well as just further architectural development of the bridge connection, it had to grow in height to some degree to create more structural integrity both at the floor and ceiling levels. But we've also, it also was pushed to a breezeway, an open air bridge connection versus a conditioned space. And so that kind of goes back to the drawing board a little bit. We decided to relate the kind of scaling of those fins more to the entry portals that you see at the west entry facade, just creating that similar parallel of languages between where you have entry and circulation. This is the main view of the Calhoun Street at that ground level. See in the previous design, we had simplified the planter box probably once again a little bit more than we should have. And so we had this long linear horizontal planter, which I think was suggested to be broken up. And I think we're excited about how this went. I think this was a difficult thing to deal with, knowing that flood elevation is at that parapet wall height there and where those windowsills sit in those white portals. We went back to the drawing board a lot on this. We're happy with what we've achieved here. The horizontal planter is broken up at each of those punched opening locations, creating a smaller white metal planter that relates kind of more to the portal above. We've also used white metal on the sides of the masonry planters to make those planters feel almost more like floating brick walls in the landscape. So I think it's a move in the right direction, and we're happy with it going that way. It also, I think, it helps scale down the height of that ground level on the street side. And then at the entry, you can see we've once again further developed the landscape to a more local flora, something that's going to hold up better in this area, and also relate back better to architecture. And we've started to further develop how those portals and entry at the main entry work. At one point, those were more plate steel elements, but for constructability, but also kind of the character that we're looking for. We create these more formed portal rectangle forms that would create those entry. This slide once again showing the two main languages and how they intersect. Next on for the development of the bridge. And that's it. So I think we've covered most of the main comments that were brought up in conceptual, and we look forward to hearing what you guys have to say for the direction.
Great, thanks so much. Questions?
A couple of
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Banks.
Thomas. We go to page B14. And I mentioned this at the conceptual, but the emblem helps, for me anyway, it helps a lot in the top. But the banding that you added at the seal that then wraps around the building, did you consider that one more of those up where the gable starts? That again, the emblem helps a lot. When it was without the emblem in the previous middle, it just felt like a tall plane there that didn't have a break where the gable end starts. And do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think I know what you're saying. Where the spring point is of the gable.
Exactly.
Would you do just a short return?
I'm not trying to get
Yeah,
into
no,
the
I
design.
understand.
I just want
It's something to consider.
Yeah.
We were actually talking about this earlier. Maybe we could pick up on this banding.
exactly.
Because that is one, so these windows are the same, and we have one that's got a little extra. Maybe we could create some sort of a double soldier there.
Well, and if you go to the next slide, it just looks at it from the opposite side. Yeah, same
Yeah.
thing, very
Yeah.
close. It's just kind of
I like the idea of it happening here because Can you go back to the other slide? Because what I like about this, how it comes, is I saw, it does look like the box is sliding out. And if we did the same thing here, it could stop as well and look like, oh, it just became the extrusion of the storefront.
Cause I mean, I like, it looks like that used to be back here and it,
Right.
it just came out here. It's a plane.
Split out.
Yeah. Second.
That's a
thing,
good thought.
On page B16. Was just wondering, you know, because we eliminated the fourth window above the, and by the way, I like the breezeway better. I think that's better, but I like the 4 windows rather than the 3. I'm guessing there's a programming reason why that had to happen.
We eliminated the. At the top, it's gonna be where the stair is, where wall is. It didn't work out, but we could. It can be spandrel at that floor.
Well-
And be put back in the other places.
And I'm, you know, and I'm talking about the 4th window, right?
It's the
So-
fourth,
In the
and the
previews,
fourth
there
window
were-
at the top, whatever, the top window. That's what.
In that 4th column, it's
The
the
4th
top
column.
window that is the problem, not the windows below
right.
it in that
Right.
column,
That's-
is what he's saying.
Right.
Yeah.
But you could still put
We can
those
put
back
that.
in. Because the problem you're talking about is on the interior.
And eventually, we're talking about connecting to a future building at that location. If you remember, that was the future phase point. So it's not, I think we can put it back if you want us to put it back. Because the circulation of the stair is gonna connect both buildings.
And given that that will happen, I'm sure sometime in the future, but for right now, that's a large section of brick wall that just gets left. At least that's what I think. Thank you.
Had some questions about the cement panels. I'll just rattle off a few in a row. First one, you got it spanning from floor to floor. Have you guys confirmed that it comes at least that length to go? I think like 12 feet in height.
Yes.
Yeah, for the floors, we are.
Okay. And then if you could talk about what happens at the windows, like where that
Detail.
dies in the windows. Talk about what happens at the floor levels where you have a horizontal joint. Talk about how you're gonna make the round corner. And the wall section showed, it looked like exposed nails and just not sure if that's really the intent.
You know what sheet you're referring to, Steve?
There was a drawing that showed with cement panels. It showed like nails going into horizontal purlins.
So on the. It's this mechanism you were referring to on the base level. For the battens themselves, we're looking to achieve those with a steel angle. And then applying 2 5/4 battens that would protrude out from the facade. And so those would be what would be framing both in the horizontal and in the vertical. And then that would just be that 1/4 inch reveal where that angle protrusion would occur for the 2 sandwich. So from afar, that it appears as one, but it's actually modeled and rendered as 2. In regards to the actual.
It's an extrusion. That's the reason why it's modeled as 2, because it looks like 2, but it's actually one piece that has a
It's got a
channel.
groove cut
It's
in
got a
it.
groove cut in
It's
it.
basically a panel with a groove.
That's correct. And
Yeah.
it's made by, that groove is made by YKK.
Oh, okay.
Oh, you're speaking to the.
I'm going to the windows,
The windows.
double window, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, on the both the storefront and the aluminum spandrel panel. YKK, Conair, all the APCO make a mold cover that you can customize. So we're doing a custom mold cover that has that fin extension to it. And then each spandrel panel would then have a fin to match that. So we're looking to mimic a look of a curtain wall in doing that, because all of those
Sure.
are really all. In regards to your question on the field of vertical clapboards, we're using.
And maybe it's detail 1 that was showing them.
Can you zoom in on that?
Sometimes that's difficult to do in terms of what happens next with the computer. So I'm asking Lawrence not to.
Are the nails concealed or are they?
They are not, so it's a V groove, it's basically a shiplap V groove. So the fastener would occur behind each of the laps.
So they would be hidden.
Hidden, correct.
Got it. And then that round corner on the nose, how do you, it's gonna be faceted, I guess?
Correct, yeah, because I think it's either a 5 or 6 foot radius. So that's the point.
And does that work with the interlocking sections of that artisan channel and being able to, sorry, rotate it? Sorry, get your water. There we go.
We gave you two, so you should.
He gets really emotional about corner details.
Oh, rendering or? Rendering's probably good. So the intent would be yes.
Mhm.
I think that if they could not achieve that,
Mhm.
we could use a typical board and plug it. Get the same look with just this like view.
I think they can extrude it at that radius. It's not like it's a big radius. That's what we're gonna try to do. And we haven't built this mock-up panel. I think we'll build a section of that to make it clear in the mock-up, so we know what it looks like. Because I want to know that it's gonna work.
Well, thank you for answering those questions.
Any other questions from the board?
One additional question too, if you could give us some insight into the materials and their colors and how those were chosen and how you feel that they support or kind of reinforce your architectural intent. Basically the colors of the brick and the colors of the siding, the colors of the panels.
Sure. Let's go back a little bit of the conceptual discussion, but a lot of originally actually all of the steel was black. And so part of one of the comments was that to make us more light and airy, more inviting for children. And so the white steel relates back to the white facade of the existing building. Even in the way the white bridge connects, it's almost more of an armature of the existing cutting into the new. The brick is relating back to the historic character of Charleston and also just something new along that facade. It also draws some connection to the MESC campus just to the north, which is all of red brick. And then the gray facade is relating back to the gray metal roof of the building. So it's really creating this kind of cohesive color palette for the overall campus, with the brick being the one kind of outstanding. And then the wood is occurring at all the undersides of the soffits, entry canopy, porches. The gray color here, this would match the fireside siding, and the white would be anything relating to any kind of the steel or aluminum, and then white aluminum.
It's kind of interesting because you're pulling off the existing Ronald McDonald House, getting some colors there, but eventually go tear that down. And then I guess take some of the colors from this back to the new Ronald McDonald. I mean, is that?
Yeah, that's the phasing of the story, you know. It's the Ronald McDonald House, and if you remember our original presentation, we were talking about the deconstructed Charleston single, and we kind of used that as the guiding principle for how we came up with this concept. And the brick to us, especially in the gable end and the entry, you know, that's a form that is familiar to us as a vertical component of that Charleston single, and then the side being the entry. And we've kind of kept it that party as part of this story. And we think we can continue that. We do the next phase in 10 years or.
So David, y'all started that conversation. I know it's not part of this presentation, but that color works with that future.
Say that again.
That white color works with that future.
Absolutely.
Okay, good, good. I mean, I just.
You wouldn't say otherwise.
Could be. I mean, yeah, so we continue.
Well, thank you. I mean, that takes us a little bit back to the conceptual approval stuff, but any other questions on the kind of the three areas we're here today? Any other board questions or comments? Done. Okay. All right, well then, thank you all very much. We'll move into public comment.
Erin Alexander with the Preservation Society of Charleston. We'd like to thank the project team for their continued outreach on this project and their response to board and public comments, especially the reintroduction of brick detail in a more substantial base on Berry Street. The more open ground floor treatment on Calhoun Street is also a step in the right direction. However, per our previous comments, we continue to encourage more meaningful activation of the Calhoun Street elevation and the Gadsden Street corner. While we understand that the interior program is driving the design approach, the walled off corner and long expanse on Calhoun without an access point are missed opportunities to create a dynamic pedestrian experience on this rapidly evolving streetscape, and we encourage further study. Regarding materials, we really appreciate the board's conversation about this so far. And we echo these questions about using such large amounts of cementitious or wood siding, as both demonstrated here, on a building of this scale. So we appreciate continued dialogue based on the precedent photos and the application, and urge the board's careful consideration of compatibility, durability, and longevity of the proposed materials at a preliminary level. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? All right, thank you all. City staff comments and recommendations, please.
Sure. Our first comment sort of repeats what applicant has already said, which is that the September conceptual approval, the applicant was asked to restudy the Calhoun and Gadsden Streets experiences relative to the blank walls for more detail overall, particularly in the brick areas, and to reconsider the use of cementitious siding. Staff support the restudy of the Calhoun and Gadsden street level facades and experience. The planter boxes on both provide a good rhythm to the street experience, and the addition of soldier coursed inset panels on Gadsden also adds visual interest. Staff support the use of soldier course banding on the various brick facades to add interest, but not interfere with the overall vertical reading of the elevation. Staff support the additional detailing at the cornices of the gable facades on Berry and Gadsden Streets. They provide a clear finish at the top. At the bottom of the brick gable facade on Berry Street, staff recommend adding banding or equivalent finishing moment to the bottom of the brick before it sits on the storefront to make that facade feel complete. The windows on Gadsden Street gable elevations are not evenly spaced. There is a larger space between the first and middle column of windows than between the middle and third. Staff know that this was true conceptual as well, but neither staff nor board commented at the time. Staff prefer that all windows are evenly spaced on this gable end as they are already on the Berry Street gable facade. The south elevation previously had 4 columns of windows, as mentioned by Mr. Metters. At conceptual, and the current proposal has removed the windows that sit in alignment above the bridge. Staff prefer the previous iteration, which helps alleviate extended blankness on this facade, and staff are neutral on the use of cementitious siding. Our conditions for approval would be 1, to add a finishing moment to the bottom of the brick on the Berry Street gable elevation. 2, evenly space the windows on the Gadsden Street gable elevation. And 3, return the 4th column of windows to the South Street elevation. And staff recommendation is for preliminary approval with board and staff conditions with final review by staff.
Thank you. All right, any response from the applicant to those comments?
Well,
You'll step to the podium just so that they can catch you on YouTube. Would be great. Thanks.
I have no problem with staff comments. We agree. We didn't even realize that it's off a little bit on those gable end windows. We'll fix that. We can add the 3 windows back.
Thank you. All right. All right, it's now time for board discussion. Does anybody like to start?
I'll make a motion if any,
Sure.
unless if somebody has a comment.
Hearing none, go ahead. Oh, you good?
Yeah. I think I'm good. I think the only thing that I would probably bring up, and I think it's something to be resolved at final though too, with cementitious siding and it's in its vertical orientation and ending of the board, the continuous length is nice. what we found sometimes is that it does highlight the kind of flashing and drip edge lines and brings in an element that's usually meant to be concealed, exposed. And so I think that's an element as it moves forward into finalizing those details and mock-up panel, that should that become a condition that creates an issue for someone, that we kind of make a note of that.
Thank you for that comment.
Yeah, and Mr. Chairman, I was gonna make that motion, to give that final review to staff, but if there's, if we'd like to see that back here again to look at those details.
No, I don't know that we need to come back here in order to do that. I just wanted to make a note of that, and not being a part of the previous where it was discussed about cementitious. I didn't know what details were talked about at that point, so I just wanted to make sure that was something mentioned.
Well, if I might interject, Mr. Redders, that potentially your motion could include specific elements you'd want to see in the mock-up, which the board would see. So if there's specific moments you would want in the mock-up, that could be part of the motion and part of the record, so that then the board gets the look at the mock-up before.
We can do that with still final approval by staff.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, I think that all of the critical details for the cement panels need to be included, and I think the applicant will know which ones those are. Whereas brick detailing, we're all generally pretty comfortable with, but that all of the ends of these boards where they joint, make corners, it's really critical. The only comment I was gonna make, aside from the cement panels, was the Calhoun Street ground floor. It is, it's a little disappointing that there's not more glass, but I understand that it's in a flood zone. And I understand that this is at King Street. But I do think that we all hope that one day Calhoun Street is a great pedestrian street, and it will only get there if each new project does things to contribute to it. So I would like to ask the applicant to study increasing the amount of glass. I see that it all lines up. I think it could all still align, but the windows could get wider, and it still work well with the architecture. And then it's a minor detail, but I think it could help the brick planners. My only advice is to kind of have fun with the detailing of them and just make them interesting. I think of a lot of brick planners you see in cities that have been around since the 70s, and everybody can't wait to get rid of them. They can be kind of dull brick boxes. So I think you could do some really interesting things to just make them interesting, because really that's what you're offering to the street. Because the architecture is pushed back. There's not a lot of glass. There's not a nicely detailed storefront. It really is those planners or what's at the street. So just have fun with that.
Thank you for those comments. Any other board discussion or comments? Okay. I guess then I'll entertain a motion if anybody would like to. Go on.
I'll make a motion for approval with board and staff comments, with final review by staff.
Just only because it was discussed, did we want to include any, that the key elements being of the cementitious panels be included as part of the mock-up?
Yeah, an additional condition that all critical cementitious panel details be included on the mock-up.
Just let me ask you. It was part of the discussion, and so if we're including board discussion, so just for clarity, because there's a few things that I said that I don't think really need to go into the motion, but they'd be part of the record for final approval by staff, so, yeah. I just checking.
Yeah, they would. I think just in this case, because there's a heightened concern about the cementitious, that having it as part of the motion for the mock-up makes it very clear to the applicant.
Okay. So if I understand it, we're seeking preliminary, the motion is for preliminary approval with board and staff conditions. And the condition that the key elements of the cementitious panels be included on the mock-up
And final review by staff.
and final review by staff. Is that correct,
That's correct.
Mr. Ramos? All right, is there a second for that motion?
Sure, second.
All right, Mr. Miller seconded. So it's up for vote. Mr. Ramos, how do you vote?
Yay in favor?
Mr. Trantham?
Yay in favor?
Mr. Brown?
Yay in favor.
Mr. Miller? And I'm also yay in favor. All right. Thank you all. All right, that takes us to our second and final. Give you all a second.
Yeah, so before we introduce it,
Yeah.
let's let them grab their
Yeah.
exhibits. Take one last look at a model. I love seeing a physical model. Thank you very much, Mr. Burke.
I'm going to choke if I'm in the middle.
Right, you do have a second bottle there, so.
I see we got the mini bottles.
Well, but we did give you two each, so. Some equal amount of water.
Yeah, sure. All
So
right.
our next item is 348 King Street. It's a category 3 building, circa 1900 in Height District 3 in the Old and Historic District. Applicant is requesting conceptual approval for the construction of a new exterior storefront and vestibule. And this just locates us where we are on King Street. And then we'll be ready for applicant presentation.
Thanks for having me. My name is Olivia Lau from Height Architects. We are the design architect for the new tenant going into this retail space at 348 King Street. Attempt to use this.
You actually
If you point it this way,
the
it's
laptop.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
right here.
Great.
Yeah.
There we
As
go.
long as it's in this direction, it's usually okay. It's okay.
Just trying to get to the context of the store on the street for you guys. This is the existing context on King Street. You can see it's one of the main commercial streets here in downtown Charleston. The current facade is in a sort of neoclassical style with cornice detailing, wood paneling, fluted pilasters. And so the existing grade, as you approach the entrance, as you can see in the lower right photograph, is quite a severe slope compared to the other stores along that street. And so our proposal is to essentially just refresh and improve on the facade for the retail store. What we're proposing to do is install a new off-white metal storefront, glass and entry doors, new lighting in the vestibule soffit. And with that, we would push the entry doors, set that a little further back from the property line in order to improve the handicap access and provide a ADA compliant slope up to the entry doors for customers. With the new storefront, we're also looking to improve the energy compliance by installing insulated glass and improve the durability and maintenance of the entire storefront with the metal finishes at the retail frontage. And just flip back to the proposed rendering so we can see a visual of what that would look like. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. Questions from the other board? If you'll just remain with us for a second, they may have a few questions for you. Any questions at this time from the board? No. Talk to us a little bit about the materials. I might have missed that, but what are the changes in materials that you're looking at?
Yes, the existing facade right now at the street level is all wood paneling. What we are proposing to do is keep the existing wood paneling at the sign band, the existing cornice detailing, the existing fluted panels, and just give that a refresh with new paint. We would keep the existing entry door to the residential entrance for the units upstairs. And we would propose new off-white metal storefront mullions and entry doors with the metal base below the glass.
Okay, thank you.
And the recess on that door, it's like a foot. The entry door is going back in about a foot.
Right now, the entry doors are set back about 3 feet from the property line, and we would want to push the doors an additional approximately 2 feet back.
Any other questions at this time from the board? All right, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Any public comment?
I'm Catherine Alexander with the Preservation Society. Just wanted to share that based on Preservation Society staff research, we believe this is a circa 1830s building, and we feel confident that this storefront has undergone numerous changes over the years, and that the ground floor, pilasters, and entablature likely date to the 1960s, while the storefront system itself is much more recent. That being said, we're not opposed to the proposal to replace the existing doors and windows. However, regarding materials, we are concerned with the proposal to replace the existing wood storefront system with aluminum, given that this is an 1830s building and wood is more compatible and authentic with that period of construction, but also given that this is located at the heart of King Street, we feel this would be a more sensitive solution and just encourage that study moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? All right, great. City staff, recommendations and comments, please.
Sure, I'll go ahead and get started while Lawrence forwards
All
through.
right.
Staff commend the applicant for keeping a significant portion of the existing neoclassical storefront design in their proposed redesign. Staff support the change in the storefront configuration that places the door in the middle of the system with symmetrical glazing on either side of the door. Staff do not support the change in material from wood to metal. Staff recommend applicant look at a painted sustainable tropical hardwood in place of their proposed metal system. And just as a note, since signage is shown on the drawings, the applicant would need to submit a comprehensive signage packet separately for review and permitting. Conditions for approval, that the new storefront should remain wood. And staff recommendation is for conceptual approval with board and staff conditions and final review by staff, if staff condition is adopted in the motion.
Thank you so much. Board discussion.
I'm in agreement with everything BD said.
Okay.
Me too. I had a little concern with the recess. I felt like given the composition of the facade and especially some of the balance in there, but I did go by the site today and there is a very, very steep slope when you come out of this building. And so, I mean, coming out of it, I'd say almost a 2 to 12 slope kind of coming out of that. So it is something I think that would be critical for someone being able to access the building in order to get in. And so given that in the comments here, I did think that was an appropriate feature. I think the only other thing, one of the things I did like is the paneling on the sides match the paneling on the roof, which orient to the kind of center doors. But given the need for it to recess, I imagine the current proposal that the applicant has is fairly appropriate.
Thank you so much. Any other comments or discussion amongst the board? Hearing none, I will be glad to entertain a motion.
I'll motion for conceptual approval with board and staff conditions and final review by staff.
Is there a second? Mr. Ramos is seconded it. All right, Mr. Ramos, how do you vote?
Yay in favor?
Mr. Cratham,
Yay in favor?
Mr. Brown,
Yay in favor.
Mr. Nutter. I'm also a yay in favor. I didn't repeat the motion, but the motion was conceptual approval with board and staff conditions and final review by staff. Everybody understand that? Yes, sir. All right, good deal. All right. Motion's approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, BD.
All right, thank you all.
Thank you all.